Okay, welcome everybody to Saratoga Whiskey Club tasting number 122. We are starting the new year off with quite the bang. We typically like to do this. We end the previous year with our Advent calendar and all the craziness from the holidays. But while people are celebrating dry January, we like to really hit it hard with a tasting that will make them break, or at least twist their arm to an extent. Maybe I shouldn't record this and really torture some people, but so we have a really special guest with us tonight from one of my favorite distilleries down in Kentucky. So we're going to be going through 8 whiskeys from 7 of them from Bardstown Bourbon Company and the other from Green River, which is a part of Bardstown Bourbon Company now. But I'm really excited to welcome with us tonight Mr. Danny Bardstown himself, Dan Calloway. He is Danny Bardstown on Instagram if you're not following him. But I've met Dan a few years ago at the distillery, and he is technically, I guess your title is VP of Hospitality and Product Development. However, I do remember, I think it was in October, maybe this last year, you said that you're trying to do one or the other instead of both, but I don't know, I haven't seen that happen yet because you seem to be all over the place, still doing all of your hospitality and in the laboratory at Bardstown doing all your product development. So I have no idea how you do it. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and basically how this is going to work is we're just going to kind of go through the whiskeys with a little background, and people will ask questions, tasting notes. We do have a scorecard online if people want to score their whiskeys. We also have a chat room if people want to ask questions in the chat, or feel free to just chime in. We're pretty relaxed about how we do things here. But yeah, so without further ado, welcome Dan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sending some special bottles to us that aren't available in New York State at the moment. So appreciate it.
Cheers, Charles. Thank you. It's awesome to be here. I love what you have done in upstate New York, and I know we've seen each other many times at the distillery. I have made the transition now off hospitality, so I'm fully product development.
So you're all product development. All right, good for you.
Yep.
Good for you.
So it's I oversee the blends, what we're doing tonight, packaging, things like that.
Okay.
But couldn't be more excited. We've got 8 fantastic pours to go through with you guys, and I'll tell you a little bit about Bardstown Bourbon Company, and then we'll just dive right in. We've got a lot of liquid to cover. Congratulations on this 8 pour tasting.
That's how we roll.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. I love it.
It's kind of how we roll up here, but it's winter,
Awesome.
So
yeah, that's great. Well, Bardstown Bourbon Company. I'm not sure anyone on this call have you visited us in Kentucky, Bardstown? Oh, a lot of you. Awesome. So you've got it. Great. So we started distilling in September of 2016. And what we wanted to be was a modern take on the industry. So we could have built the industry in the distillery in San Francisco or Miami, but we chose to build it in Bardstown, Kentucky, the bourbon capital of the world, to be surrounded by the history. We want to be a modern take on a traditional industry. We do that through 3 things: innovation, collaboration, and transparency. So if there's nothing else you take away tonight, I hope you take away those 3 words. Innovation, we make 54 unique recipes, the most technically advanced distillery in the country. Collaboration, we work together with about 30 different brands, brands like High West, Kentucky Owl, Bell Mead, Jefferson, some of the biggest spirits companies. We're able to make custom bourbon for them. So it's not just bourbon we already made and selling off. It's like a chef coming in and using our kitchen. We target 500 points of distillation to make specific recipes for those brands. And we take all those knowledge, best practice, and apply it to our own spirit. And the third and most important piece is transparency. As you know, bourbon is an industry built on myths, legends, made up kernels, all kinds of George Washington's favorite bourbon this, and We want to take all of that away, right? When you walk up to our distillery, it's an all glass front. When you look at our packaging and our bottles that you'll try tonight, we put every component of the recipe, the breakdown, right on the side. So from the process, the packaging, grain to glass, it's an open, modern experience. So we're continuing to grow. We've quadrupled in size. We have another expansion coming. We'll be a top 10 whiskey. We've been a top 10 whiskey producer and quickly moving into the top 5. We're currently in 24 markets, you guys included in that list, and we'll just continue to grow. The most important piece that we've done, and we're going to taste it. You guys, I think will be, actually, I know you'll be the first people in New York to try our 6-year estate distilled product, which I'll tell you a lot about later when we get to it. But we're going to kick off with a fun, lighthearted tasting, and we may come back to it. It's a brand we bought this year called Green River. We picked up Green River first because of what they could produce in Kentucky, but most importantly, it was the perfect juxtaposition for our portfolio. So it comes in at $34.99. It's a great classic Kentucky where we're modern. This is DSP KY10, which means it's the 10th oldest distillery in Kentucky, starting in 1885. It went on through multiple iterations, medley. It had some fires, shut down for Prohibition. It's now been revitalized as the Green River brand. It was originally marketed as the whiskey without regrets. It wouldn't give you a hangover. We can't legally claim that anymore, but it comes in at 90 proof. It's a blend of 4 to 6 years. So it kind of targets a, call it a 5-year age profile. And we get there through blending 4 to 6 years. So one of my favorite pours on the market. This is going to hit you guys in April. So we're putting Green River into all our home markets. And I just thought it'd be a fun way to kick off the tasting. So talking about bourbon, whenever you're tasting, it looks like a lot of you had Glencairns. Obviously, you just want to be aware. Glencairns really came up, and I'm sure you guys are in a whiskey club, you know all this, just with the strong alcohol content that it can push. You know, they were really designed for Scottish whiskey, which can be a little lower. So just be careful when you're taking bourbon. This at 90 proof shouldn't be an issue, but you go around, you know, you can gauge the intensity first. I start at a distance, slowly come up. With youthful bourbons, and with this one is no exception, you'll get a nice little peach note on the aroma. Then, of course, every classic Kentucky bourbon you taste is going to have 3 things: caramel, vanilla, baking spice, right? That's kind of your, if you want to center on Kentucky bourbon, it's those 3 things. 90 proof, there's a nice deep maple note on this one. And then if you're, unfortunately, if this is your first bourbon of the day, I always just do a wake up sip, but hopefully we're in a bourbon club. You've been going a little bit on this, so go ahead and try a sip. And it's just, to me, beautiful balance. And I think it's a great way to start. We're going to taste a lot of experimental whiskey tonight, different finishing, different ryes. This is the best of classic 5-year Kentucky bourbon.
So how did this go about? Like, why Green River? You know, I know you have quite the operation already and the room to grow within your own facility. Why did you do this with Green River?
Yeah, well, honestly, it was initially because what they could offer in custom production. As we started, we support a lot of brands. We lay down a lot of whiskey for ourselves, but also big brands like Jefferson's and emerging brands like 15 Stars, and we're helping them get off the ground.
Okay.
Our worst case scenario would be that a brand expands and we have to cut them off, basically, because we're growing, our partner brands are growing. We don't want to be in a position where we have to say, no, we can't give you the barrels you need to make your brand grow. So we needed more Kentucky production. Mm-hmm. So we were scouting around for Kentucky distilleries, and then we just fell in love with this brand, everything it represents. Certainly the juxtaposition between Bardstown Bourbon Company, modern, and a classic historical brand that, most importantly, tells an authentic story. That still is right there. I compare it to like a cast iron skillet, right? There's a flavor that you can only get from time, right? And you can walk around the grounds and you can see this tradition. And that was very attractive to me to balance what we're doing at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Cool. Are there going to be other iterations from Green River, like, you know?
Yes. So this is their classic bourbon. Right when it launches in New York, we'll have a wheated variety. So this is 21% rye. The wheated is 21% wheat, and we'll taste some wheated bourbon tonight, and it follows that same classic profile. Beautiful. Then we'll do a rye, barrel proof, and a single barrel. So we think we're at the very beginning of this runway for this brand. I think we can do great things with it. And
That's awesome.
It's rare to see a new authentic Kentucky bourbon, right? Going back to those myths and legends. This is the real deal. You can tour. It's the pride of Owensboro. It's the only functioning distillery in Owensboro. So well worth the trip.
Yeah, Holly was just there in the fall. She visited, I think it was in September, and said it was pretty awesome. So
Yeah, I was looking for my notes to see. Oh, here it is, what I tasted there. Yeah, I tried the wheated Yellow Banks and then the bourbon.
Great. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll be coming out with those. And if you guys come back and you want to see it, I would certainly hit me up on Instagram or an email. There are rooms on site in Owensboro where it looks like someone hit a light switch in 1967, right? And it's just dust. And they used to do all their own media. Back in 1910, it was the most advertised whiskey in the world. So they have all these old magazines and photos, and just a really cool story that we're bringing back to life.
was the label like the current label? Was it?
Yeah. So this really has a lot of throwback to the original. They did, if you Google them, they did very well with jugs, but all this iconography, it's this custom glass, and the bottle is a horseshoe, and that's the original GR and the horseshoe. And on the tack strip, you can see a lot of the original emblems. And,
Pretty, yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful little package. So $34.99 too for a 5-year authentic Kentucky is
Yeah,
it's
it's hard
just
to
an
beat
awesome
that.
place. Yeah.
So what happened that they were so big at one point? What happened to them?
Like many distilleries, a fire,
Prohibition? Oh.
prohibition, and a fire. It actually burned down during prohibition, so kind of a double whammy, and then was tough to bring back. Yeah.
Okay, Dan, on the cork, it does, with a cap, it does say something without, and you went too fast. Is that without hangovers? What does it say?
The whiskey without regrets is another
Okay.
one of their tagline. Yeah, the whiskey.
Okay.
Can you see that? All right, whiskey without
Okay, thank you.
regrets.
There's never regrets. I don't know what that's about.
Well, sometimes they, never mind. Are
Said high on the
you producing from both distilleries to fulfill your various contracts?
Yes, we are.
Is there any
Exactly.
difference in the characteristics of the whiskeys from the two?
100%, I believe they are, and the big difference is if Green River is classic Kentucky, does 3 recipes. Bardstown Bourbon Company is the most flexible, right? So everything from single malt to high rise to different yeast, 10,000 different yeast varieties, different chars. Bardstown Bourbon Company is really the only distillery in the country that can do customized distillation to that level. Green River is more tradition.
I guess if you use the same recipe in both distilleries, does it, how close does it come out?
It's pretty different, to be honest. The liquid coming off the still, and you'll taste. So this is Green River bourbon. On the tasting today, you'll try some BBC products straight from the still. Very different characteristics. It comes down to yeast and then the machinery, what proof you go into the barrel, just a litany of different variables past just your simple grain percentage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question though.
It's
Cool.
a
So that,
wonderful sipper. Wonderful.
Oh,
sipper.
it's great. It's great. So that's why we feel we really love this brand and what we can do with it. So it's been a big part of my job is now putting together these lots to build out the wheated, to continue the rye. But just wanted to make sure you guys tasted this. It's not available in New York right now, but a couple months, March or April, it'll be on the shelf. So definitely one to scoop up and keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted you guys to be aware of that. And now I think we can swing over to Bardstown Bourbon Company. And I thought I heard him say 90 proof. Yes, 90 proof, 45%. So I believe, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, we're hopping over to the Fusion series.
Yes, Fusion number 8.
Perfect. Got it here. So when we started distilling in 2016, most new distilleries will come out of the gate with a gin or a vodka, right? Why do you think you need a gin or a vodka as a whiskey distillery? Any
No age.
guesses?
No age.
Age and cash.
Money,
Money.
cash flow, right?
You don't have to
By the time you
age
build the
anything.
yeah, exactly. We were fortunate enough through custom distillation to only focus on whiskey. We didn't have to make gin, we didn't have to make vodka. The trick is we wanted to be patient. We also didn't want to come out with a 2-year bourbon. So we wanted to wait till we have a 6-year age statement before we release our product. We wanted people to try what we're making. So what we came out with was this Fusion series. It's a fusion of the young product off our stills and aged 12-year Kentucky bourbon. And we put the graph right on the bottle. So you can see the breakdown. It's 70% our product, usually 3 or 4 years, 30% 12-year Kentucky. And we put each recipe, everything you need to know, the source right on the side of the label right here. Proofs in, we've got it at 95.5. This is a nice soft sipper. You get the best of both worlds. You get youthful grain. To me, that peach, that stone fruit, corn characteristics from young bourbon, but then balanced on a bed of oak and smoke from the 12-year. So we're coming up above all else with a balance of the young and the old. So it's a way to taste what's coming off our stills, but balancing the flavor profile. So it's a great introduction to Bardstown Bourbon Company.
And I've had a number of fusions over the years, and when I was there in November, I tasted the 8, and I was like, wow. I mean, it's really progressed nicely from the beginning. You know, it's definitely, you see the age get a bigger percentage, you know, or get older in the bigger percentage, and it still balances incredibly well. You know, and I think of all of your products, I mean, you said it right with Green River, even though that wasn't necessarily yours originally. The balance has been, I think, one of the biggest aspects of your whiskeys. And so Fusion, with being a blend, you know, that's so important, obviously. Balance is right on.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. So, and it goes back to those 3 things: innovation, collaboration, and transparency. You're going to see them on every product. So an innovative blend, collaborative, because I haven't touched on this yet. When we started selling 2016, the next piece was to add a restaurant and bar. There's legislation in Kentucky that allowed us to do a full service restaurant and bar. In the past, if you came and saw us, you could just get a little pour of whiskey, couldn't get a cocktail, just something off the still, a small sample, and you're on your way. We fortunately were building, so we jumped on that and built a magnificent restaurant, full service bar. And what comes with that is an executive chef, a beverage director, all kinds of different perspectives on what whiskey can be. So I oversee the blends, but it's not me in a dark room by myself. It's collaborative. It's calling people in. It's running blind tastings, bouncing ideas. Every single mash bill, every single product will have our full team behind it. And then, of course, the transparency right there on the label.
Is this available in New York State?
Yeah, we have this one in our shop. $65.99. Is that right, Holly? I can't see.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, and it has the breakdown of the 8 on our website too, since not everyone has the bottle.
That's awesome. And then the key piece of Fusion, this is kind of the bittersweet part of Fusion, is that we always thought Fusion would lead the way to our own core product. So it's a way to see what we're distilling. But now, as we're going to move into our Origin series, 100% estate distilled product, we're going to retire the Fusion. So the Fusion has about 8,000 cases left in the country. And then once those are gone, the series will be gone, because we'll focus on our 100%. I've got a plan to bring it back in about 3-4 years, but with all our own products. So a BBC 3-year with an 8-year type thing.
Okay.
So I think we could see it there, but for now, we want to pave the way. When people taste product off our still, we want it to be in the 100% estate distilled expression.
And number 8 is the last one, or is
Number
there-
9.
Number 9.
There's a 9 out in certain states, and
Yeah.
it should be hitting New York, but there's not very much of it. And then the series will hibernate.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So, like I said, everything we've been doing has really been leading up to this point, and you guys are the first in really the first people I know out of state to be tasting this. I think a little bit got to Michigan. It's available in Kentucky. It's all on trucks right now as we speak. So I don't believe it's hit your store yet, Charles, the Origin series.
No, not at all.
Okay, so this is a big deal. This is where our eyes have been focused since we started in 2016, is to get to a product with a 6-year age statement, 100% distilled by our team. And I think I've got a little sample bottle back here, so you can see BBC Origin series. On the mat, do you have it started with the bottle and bond?
No, we're starting.
You have
the other one, the white.
Here, I'll get the white. A little decoration here. So this is our 6-year bourbon with the white label. It's 60% corn, 36% rye, and 4% barley. So this is a pretty innovative recipe on traditional bourbon. Usually when you say a high rye bourbon, obviously you're talking about a bourbon, majority corn, 51% corn. Your secondary or flavoring grain, you come to a fork in the road. You either pick spicy, vibrant rye or smooth, soft wheat. So we're going to do the rye first and then the wheat. A high rye traditionally is about 18% rye. This is 36% rye. What that means is you're going to get a burst of flavor on the nose, herbal, green tea, just all kinds of flavor and pepper that's going to hit you. But then I really want you to focus on the finish for this 36% rye. About 5 to 10 seconds after you take your taste, you're going to get this grip, stick, sizzle, and spice, this tannic pop rocks feeling that is just a magnificent balanced finish that really defines the flavor profile of this pour. So I got a little sample I took from the barrel to taste alongside you guys. And taking the aroma, you'll get those caramel and rye notes. It's proofed at 96, so it's got some nice body to it. I really like that area for bourbon. And then really zone in on the finish.
I love, there's like a green tea quality to it in the back. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
I just did some tastings out in Denver, and that was the main thing I put with this, was a little herbal tea bag. And so there's 2 Origin series. This one, just to make sure you have the right one, should be completely drying you out on the back and sides. If it's a soft liftoff, you're on the wheat. If you've got peach with a soft liftoff, your wheat, this should be dry and aggressive.
This is very dry and aggressive. Yep.
Yeah. So it's got tannin. I always say tannin is a feeling, not a flavor. There's no flavor to tannin. Same tannin you would find in a Napa cab, or if you left a tea bag to steep too long, it just dries you out back here. And an elevated rye component will certainly bring that. And we love this one for that reason, because it makes a nice sipper with a lot of personality, but also for cocktails. With that finish, you can hold your own with vermouth. You can punch with ginger beer in a mule. It's just got a lot to offer for craft cocktails as well as a sipper. And my favorite part of it, it comes in 750 ml, comes in at $44.99. So we price this in a approachable range. We want people to go out, be able to find it and try it. So that's our core bourbon.
Why 96?
To me, that is the balance of dilution that's soft, but not watery, and thinking about this to play with cocktails to put it high enough. Another key component is I don't like to go beneath 93, and we don't as a team, because we don't want to chill filter it either. Once you start dipping into the 90s, you're going to get a lot of flock and pushback, flock being solids in the liquid when it gets cold.
Yeah.
And that was a consideration. My main thing is heat versus viscosity. The lower the proof, the more watery and thinner the spirit. And I just really like the flavor from, say, call it 95 to 107 is just a nice sipper for me. Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So 6 years. Why did you guys pick 6 years? Was that like an initial target, or I mean, were you thinking 4 years to start? You know,
we always, yeah, great question. We always targeted 6 years, at least 6 years, and the main key is everyone comes out, or most brands tend to come out at 4 years, and a lot people don't realize this. If you're younger than 4 years, you have to put an age statement on the label. So if you were 3 years, 11 months, you would have to write on the label somewhere that you're 3 years, 11 months. So most bourbon brands choose to wait till they're 4 years old so they don't have to say. We wanted to go further than the minimum and really take it to 6 years, where the grain and barrel notes find that balance. And it's right back to what you said, Charles, about balance. To me, 6-year profile is a perfect spot. Most of my favorite bourbons hover between 6 and 10 years.
So at what point do you use an age statement?
Well, if you could, you'll see tons of age statements high. They're just not legally required.
I mean, do you guys have a plan at 8 or 10 or,
We might. What we do is on the side of the label, you'll see it says when it's distilled. So these say when you get the 750s, it says fall 2016 right on the side. So that's how we'll be transparent and call out.
It already has an age statement, basically.
Yep. On the side here, it says 6 year.
That's awesome.
So we'll always share what information we can, which means every drop of liquid in this bottle is at least 6 years old.
So did you, since you're now into product development, did you handwrite all of the fall 2016?
No, that's a handwritten printer that you can pick whatever font you want, but that would be an undertaking.
I'm a little disappointed, to tell you.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't want to burst your bubble.
Hey, Dan, I have a question, and I was a couple minutes late. So if you already went through this, Charles will tell me. But what's your background, not only with Bardstown, but how long have you been working with them, and how did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. So actually, my background is in music. So I was a classical musician for about 10 years. That's what my degrees are in. I was playing in the Louisiana Philharmonic in New Orleans, orchestra music, and thought that was going to be my career. Then I was French horn. I was a French horn player and had no intentions of stopping. And then I was doing these tours in China. I would do every year, and my now wife was on the tour, and she lived in Kentucky. So I was driving from New Orleans to Kentucky to see her, and she basically gave me the ultimatum to move to Kentucky or don't, and so I did. I moved to Kentucky, and orchestras aren't, you can't just get a new job as an orchestra musician, they're lifetime positions. So was always into wine, had my SOM certifications, obviously New Orleans cocktail culture. So I started running a fine dining restaurant called Decca in Louisville.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was running that.
Been to Decca many times.
With
okay,
Annie
yeah.
Petrie. With Annie Petrie.
Yeah, I know Annie well.
Yeah.
So we were locked in for a few years there. It was a great place. And
Indeed.
from there, I met the people starting Bardstown. I became friends with the owner of Copper and Kings and Joe Heron, and he introduced me to the people starting Bardstown. They were looking for someone, as I said, this law passed where you could build a bar and restaurant. They were looking for someone to open their bar and restaurant. So I came down to do that. And then we opened the visitors center, and I opened the visitors center. So then was running the restaurant and the visitors center. But the entire time I was just kind of inching my way over into products, just sitting in on every tasting. And then it's like, hey, I'll keep this spreadsheet. I'll do this. And I had the wine background, so it was kind of a natural fit on flavor. And restaurants, I always think about flavor. And like I said, for the Somm stuff, you have to do a lot of blind tasting, and I just loved everything about the industry, and kind of forced my way into the product development role. And then in about a month, I'll take on the master blender role. So pretty excited for that to happen. But I guess just right place, right time.
I'm curious how Dan would do in our advent calendar.
Oh yeah, is it a blind tasting?
Yeah, it's blind.
I love it. I was on a podcast this morning, and I brought this up because I don't think people blind taste enough in bourbon. It's so common in wine to have a club and everyone shows up with a bottle in a brown bag. The key piece is there's no judgment. If you're going to blind taste, you have to be ready to be humiliated and completely get it wrong and swear, hey, this is my favorite bourbon. And on the blind tasting, you say, I don't like it, right? And if you're willing to do that and put yourself out there and be okay with being a little embarrassed, you will get so much better so quickly. And then the other key piece is to have a group. So I was lucky to have a group of 5 people that would meet a few times a week because we were all ran in the same restaurant circles and could just compete in a way, but judgment free. No one was giving anyone a hard time. And it was like a rocket ship on tasting through blind tasting. That was really how I learned how to think about flavor.
Yeah,
Somebody
we
needs
try,
to
we,
unseat
we
you
try
back
to do
anyways.
that a lot here. So
yeah, it's I think, and I can feel it with this club too. You have to have an atmosphere of not, I'm not saying no judgment, because you can judge some, sure. You say that was a bad call, but just a welcoming environment, and it helps everyone.
I feel like Charles and Holly get more and more angry every time they blind each other on the podcast.
on our podcast.
We get worse, Kim. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we get.
Well,
we get
I
worse
get a
than
little
that.
sour when Holly puts out a dram that has gone bad. And
It was not completely bad, but it was headed there, which, hey, that's something, that's part of the Somm world, right?
Yeah,
My
calling out
defense.
faults. Yeah, you could say this has been open too long.
There are no bad whiskeys, only whiskeys that do bad things.
Perfect. But yeah, that's my background. So music to restaurants, to the
you're
hospitality
quite
side.
you're quite the cook too, right?
Yeah, I cook a lot, and that's another way to learn flavor is to cook. That helps just have a point of reference. Before I got into restaurants and cooking, I always knew leather. I could pick out leather only because I played Little League baseball, right? And I knew what a catcher's mitt smelled like. And it was so easy. I was like, yep, that's leather, which you find a lot of that in wine and bourbon too. But yeah, if you cook, then you've got a spice cabinet, you can relate it. Like ginger, so many ryes, this one, no exception. If you get a piece of candied ginger or just ginger out of your kitchen and smell it, put a little on your tongue and then taste this, all of a sudden you'll notice, hey, there's a huge ginger note on most rye bourbons.
Nice.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I want you guys to taste maybe my favorite one. Actually, they're all my favorites, but a really special one for us. Most importantly, because I have almost nothing to do with it. This is our master distiller, Steve Nally's, really, to me, his signature on the industry. So Steve, 50 years, just celebrated 50 years in the industry. He grew up next to Maker's Mark, started working every position there, worked his way up, became master distiller at Maker's Mark when they made about 70 barrels a week. They do about 1,200 a day now. So he was there from the very beginning, oversaw the rise. All those beautiful Maker's expressions from late 80s, early 90s, that's all him when he was master distiller. Retired, went over, started Wyoming Whiskey. Had a bit of falling out with Wyoming Whiskey because he didn't want to release it. I think they came out initially at 3 years and he didn't want to do that. So that was the rub, and retired again. And then we brought him out to really start our program. So the first thing that came off our stills was this wheated expression, 68 corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley. This is the one a lot of the people in the industry have been looking forward to tasting, and it just came out. So I hope you enjoy this one. I think it's a fantastic pour. With a lot of wheated, you'll get more a creamy mouthfeel. You'll get stone fruit, peach. Of course, the caramel and vanilla are there, but then really focus on the mouthfeel, how it lifts off. Where previously the rye hung around and kind of lit you up and lingered, this is a softer lift off. And,
Like a
and
sugar
with,
cookie.
yeah. And with wheated, you're always a little closer to the grains, in my opinion. The corn grain and the wheat grain.
So why bottled in bond on the wheated and not on the high rye?
Great question. And I just tasted, I said stone fruit peach, but it's really apricot on the palate in a big way.
Oh, yeah.
To me, so all of our products could be bottle and bond, right? They were distilled one place, one season. The difference, this is 100 proof. When thinking about it, it made sense for Steve's signature to be a bottle and bond as that throwback to tradition. Just thinking about classic flavor. The one we tasted before, if we put it at 100 proof, it would be a bottle and bond. Also, with the smooth nature of the wheat, it can stand to sit at a little higher proof, at that 100 proof, and not have the ethanol heat that the rye bourbon expression does. If anything, it's a little smoother. So if there was one that I would take up to 100, it would be the softer, creamier wheat. Because to me, it still doesn't have the pop that you get from others. So they're balanced at the right place. So
Yeah,
two
I'm
reasons.
sorry. Can you run
Yeah.
that mash bill again? What was that?
It is 68% corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley.
Thanks.
Yep. And the bourbon, the white label bourbon was 60 corn, huge rye content at 36, and then 4% barley.
So what are your thoughts about higher percentages of malted barley in flavor in bourbons?
Yeah, I think there's I have a lot of thoughts on them. A few distilleries are doing incredible things with malt. And we have some chocolate malt going, some different varieties. Once you start going up above 12, you really start to pick up the flavor. You could do a chocolate malt at 5%. It's almost like Princess and the Pea, right? Like if you know that story, it's a really distinct flavor that cuts through the bourbon. If you get up to say an 18 to 20% malt, which there's one from I think Castle and Key and Town Branch. It's somewhere Eastern Kentucky that I've tried a bunch of.
Town Branch
And
is a lot of
Town Branch,
Yeah.
yeah, high malt, yeah, and it's just incredibly distinctive.
Yeah.
And it can dominate. It can be a bully, right? Even at 20%, it can bully. So malt is necessary in bourbon, as you know, for the saccharification from going from starch to sugar. Really helps, but it certainly plays a large role in the flavor.
Do you
Dan,
make
just
anything
combine-
without the? Do you make anything without the malted barley?
Yeah, we do. We do a few things. The popular one we do is one we made for High West. They no longer use it anymore, but we're making it for ourselves. Is 60% corn, 40% malted barley. So it's two distinct 40% rye, 60% corn, 40% rye, no malted barley. So you just
It's
add
malted rye, you said.
No, so I misspoke. I said malted barley initially. It's just rye.
Unmalted rye.
Unmalted rye, 60 corn, 40% unmalted rye.
And enzymes.
You have to do the enzymes to help with the conversion from starch to sugar if you don't see a good barley content.
Speaking of
But
malted
before
rye,
this,
any thoughts of doing something with malted rye?
I was just at a few places, Taunua being one, outside Denver that does malted rye. Obviously, the New Riff, what they've done has been really cool there. Close with those guys, and yes, short answer, yes. Love the profile, and we've got we make about 54 different recipes in any given year. So if you stack that up, we've got about over 100 now of recipes we have access to that are aging.
Dan, you when talking about the malted barley, you also threw in, besides the percentage, the degree of roast, because you were talking about a chocolate malt. So you have both
Yes.
the amount of the barley and the degree to which it's roasted.
Yeah,
So
and
you're getting it.
it goes back to those 500 points of distillation, right? So
I asked a question. I don't know what those are.
wait, what do you mean? The degrees of roast?
What's 500 points of distillation?
Don't
Oh,
list
the
them all.
question on the chat. Okay, I won't list them all, but if you think about the degree of fining on the grain, you know, that could be a start. So just call that how much we use. It's like an espresso grinder. How much do you want to dial in the grain? The huge pieces for flavor that are dramatic flavor implications is what temperature you want to come off the still and what proof you want to go in the barrel. So if we take a 2-minute detour, I'll kind of explain this because it's often misquoted. So bourbon has to distill off the still, the proof, at a lower place than, say, a vodka. So we can start there. Vodka is a neutral grain spirit. It's distilled to 95% alcohol or 190 proof. That means it's like hand sanitizer, odorless, flavorless, because you've distilled all the flavor. Bourbon, you have to put beneath 160, but you could decide to take it off at 120 or 105. In bourbon, you have to go in the barrel beneath 125, but that doesn't mean that you can't come off the still at 110 and go into the barrel at 110. And then you could bottle at 110. So if you did those 3 things in a row, you're not diluting it across the process. Where if you took the opposite, if you came off the still at 160 and took all the flavor you could out of the mix, then you went into the barrel at 125 and then you watered it down to go into the bottle, you're essentially half water. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way, but your flavor is a lot more watery. I compare it to if you made a chili, right? And you put the water in the front end. So you went into the barrel 125 instead of if you poured the chili and just added water on top, it would taste very watery, right? So you want to limit water across each step of the process, and B, limit the amount of water from the barrel to the bottle. That last step. If you come out of the barrel at 125 and go into the bottle at 80, half of your product is water. So that was a lot of information, but yeah. So
Isn't it
those would be
still
things you
half
could
water?
pick.
I mean, the final proof, okay, whether it's,
But
isn't it still going to be half water?
Well, it matters when you add the water, right? So if you go into the barrel, if your barrel is sitting at 125 proof and you add all your water, then that water that you added, is interacting with the barrel. It's picking up the flavor over the course of 6 years. If you wait to the last second before you bottle and never touch the barrel, the water never gets any of that. Literally like you just poured water in a soup. So you have the same amount of liquid, but your liquid never interacted with the barrel. The reason a lot of brands do it is it's cheaper because you don't have to buy as many barrels.
Yeah, so what about Origin series? Like what does the barrel entry proof on that? And
Goes anywhere from 120 down to 110 with
So
our
they're
experiments.
they're
Yeah,
different.
different proofs, blending them together.
Okay,
And then keeping the bottle proof up at 96 instead of going down at 80, you're
sure,
going to keep a lot more flavor.
right.
But back to the 500 points, you could have, there's 10,000 varieties of yeast. You could pick those yeasts and bring them in. We just made a bourbon out of popcorn, which is wild, right? A popcorn company is getting into spirits. So we're the only distillery where they can bring their popcorn. It's Black Jewel popcorn. They can bring it in. We can make whiskey out of popcorn.
Just to finish the thoughts though about the water and when it goes in. So basically what's happening is you put it in and you're getting the water is picking up the different flavors along the way versus having it be concentrated along the way. Then you're adding the water and it's still the same amount of water, but it's the
Correct.
flavors that are
Yeah,
dissolved in the water.
so John,
That
there's
makes a difference.
there's a big, it's a big point of conversation. There's like Michter's makes a big deal about their barrel entry proof being below 110
Right,
because, then they don't have to add water on the back end.
right.
And I mean, it's a huge, there are quite a few, studies or not studies, but people out there who would say that lower barrel entry proof typically provides a better flavor of your bourbon. So, you know, again, it comes down to cost savings and what your goal is, I guess, with making your whiskey, right? So,
Well, it's probably more able to pick up other flavors and keep them versus just adding the dilution.
yes,
Mhm.
right,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last, not to drive this point too far, but the other key piece is what proof you come off the still. Obviously, the higher you come off the still, the less congeners, esters, flavors you're going to retain, like a vodka. The lower you come off the still, the more robust and flavorful you'll be. And that can also go negative if you come too low off the still. It would be unpleasant flavors that you're picking up.
right. It's not distilled enough.
And then
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Add to that where you're making your cuts.
Yep. Well, a column's still continuous. There's not too many
Okay.
cuts going. It's more of a continuous system than a pot system. But yes, dialing that in. Exactly. But
All right.
to keep moving, I think
Yes.
so. We covered the Origin series.
You're gonna
haven't
wait
talked
up.
about the Origin series.
You're gonna go home at 1 a.m. this week.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
I thought he was home.
So we're doing Discovery 8 and 9 are the next two.
Yeah. So this is something. This is I just did with the podcast I did this morning with Nick Smith. Right. Nick is oversees the distillation world. I oversee the blends. Right. The blends, the products, and this is kind of where I start to lean in is the discovery and the collabs. We're going to start with 8. Which is a special one for me because it was the not pain in the ass, but the largest amount of effort and trial and error that went into this. This is a cool one. If you know discovery, it's the art of blending, right? And blended whiskey is a dirty word right now in our industry because back in the 60s, right? Late 60s, there was a glut of bourbon. Basically, the distilleries thought they were going to shut down for the Korean War. They didn't. You know, in advance of thinking they were going to shut down, they made an excess of product. They didn't shut down. At the same time that they had extra product, clear spirits were coming on, vodkas, martinis, James Bond, right? That's all in. So so bourbon is at a fork in the road. They could either reduce the price or age it longer. They chose to reduce the price and chase the vodka drinkers. And so they made blended whiskeys. They saw what Johnny Walker did, right? Johnny Walker wanted to attract drinkers in London. So they took thick malted barley flavor profiles and smoothed them out with neutral grain whiskey, essentially vodka. Bourbon brands did the same thing in the late 60s, and they started making blended whiskey, basic bourbon and vodka put together to attract, basically create a softer, smoother, but less flavorful profile. What we're doing with blended whiskey is not that. What we're taking is individual high quality spirits and creating a blend that's better than any of its individual components. We have to say blended whiskey because there's no legal definition that is a high premium word for what we're doing. There's only certain finite amount of categories that exist. And this falls into a blended whiskey because you have bourbon, rye, Canadian whiskey, and Tennessee whiskey all in one pour. So you can't call it a bourbon. You can't call it a rye. You can't even call it an American whiskey because of the Canadian. So it's a blended whiskey. So the heart of this is 12-year Kentucky bourbon. Then you've got a little bit of MGP rye, some Hiram Walker at 11%, and then a tiny amount of 95.5. It's going to have high proof, a ton of pop, so a lot more aggressive than what we just tried with the higher proof, and 2 true rye whiskeys in the blend. Any
Is it
questions?
Canadian
Yeah.
rye, or is it a Canadian blend?
Well, that is it's a kind of a similar question to the Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey debate, where you can have rye from Canada that doesn't actually have the rye grain in it. It just has to be characteristic of rye. So this actually is dominated by corn on this Canadian, but you could technically refer to it as a rye.
Canadian
we put-
rye, right.
Yeah, and
Thank
we
you.
put the mash bill right on the side. So if you see here, you'll see corn 100% from Ontario.
12 years.
12 years. Yeah. And that just adds on the profile the sweetness. So you're getting the spice from the rye, the caramel, the vanilla from the bourbon, and then the roundness and sweetness from the Canadian corn.
How has Bardstown Bourbon Company, I guess what a lot of people, when they talk about you, obviously your blends are fantastic, but also the whiskey that you get access to for your blends. You know, how did you get that quick of access? I mean, obviously you have a beautiful distillery and you can buy volume, but how are those relationships built so quickly?
Well, I'll say we have a small but incredible team. And one of those team members is Susie Garvin, who came up through MGP, probably the most connected person in the industry. Incredible relationship with her. And she has these connections to get access to great products. The other thing I will say is this idea of buying 12-year whiskey is pretty much dying out, right? That's why we're fortunate to have our own 6-year product. The last thing I would do as a bourbon brand, if I was launching a brand today, is rely on buying whiskey from a source. Every year it gets more expensive and it gets harder to find. We've been very fortunate to make trades of our young stuff to bring in, say, Old Wild Turkey or Old Heaven Hill. But each year that goes by, it gets difficult. That makes my job more difficult, but it also makes us more creative, right? So the Discovery 9 we'll try. We found whiskey from a Georgia distillery that was making 1 barrel a day and it's since closed. So we're really leaning into that name Discovery to go out and find these barrels that maybe someone else didn't see an opportunity for them.
So is the
Yeah.
12-year in this Heaven Hill?
I can't officially say, but yes.
It tastes like it.
Yeah, so that 78 10 12 recipe is that's Heaven Hill's
Yeah.
mash bill number 1. Yep, and then you've got MGP on the rise and then Hiram Walker on the Canadian. And each piece really brings something special. And like you say, this is balanced, but it's balanced with a punch, if that
That's
makes
beautiful,
sense. It's a
beautiful.
balanced punch.
Beautiful whiskey.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's 8. And then unlike Fusion, discoveries are not progressive. They're basically my goal with them is to be able to describe each one in its own word and to have an identity. So if 8 is kind of the vibrant one, right? Where it's a lot of rye spice. 9 is, well, it's 2 words on 9. We can go ahead and pour it. Or just relax with your 8 and we can talk about it. But I really enjoy getting to this 9.
So which was the one? There was one when I was there. I don't know if it was November or October, but one of the employees in the gift shop told me that it was either 8 or 9 was the favorite amongst employees at the distillery.
I don't know. They don't tell me that. They'd be worried they'd hurt.
I mean, she was pretty adamant. She was
I
like,
don't know. It could be 8. 8 was certainly a favorite for
Okay.
a long time. 9 has done really well with reviews. I personally love 8. I didn't even talk about another piece on 8 where I should have gone into this. I was just excited to get to the next one. 8 is also aged with real authentic wood staves. So we made the blend of 8. Then I made a custom blend of 5 different types of wood. And we made a custom steel rig to connect all the pieces of wood and drop them in to the tank and let them sit there. And we outline the whole process if you want to see everything, because we want to keep that transparency. There just wasn't enough room to detail it. Right here on the side of the bottle, there's a QR code, and you can see how we put these blended staves together. And they actually all came of age. At this point in time, I was tasting it every day, and it came of age on a Saturday, and there were no bottling employees to take the staves out. So I had to do them all by hand. It took about 4 hours to pull every single stave out. But we got it out at the right time and was really proud of that one.
I noticed that Bardstown Bourbon Company started using QR codes right after we started using them on our single barrels here in the shop. So
That's yeah.
I'm thinking that there's some kind of correlation there, but I didn't want to call you guys out.
Well, imitation's the highest form of flattery.
Yes, exactly. So you keep it quiet, it all works out.
We
So.
should see how many scans they have compared to us.
Well, it's funny. Our marketing director just came over from Old Forester about 6 months ago. So he led a lot of their projects, and they had some $1 million QR code thing they did all down Main Street. And they put over $1 million into it. And he said they had 4 clicks by the end of it. So he is not high on QR codes. We'll see.
We should look at ours, Holly. I don't think we've ever looked at that. I don't know if we want to look at them.
Dan showed them to us. No, they were pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's good. I'm sure our store pick, from Bardstown Bourbon Company would be off the charts because it's got the double QR code going on. So, but that's not, we'll figure that
Double QR code. That's new territory. A QR code within a QR code.
That's right.
Well, number 9 is really just like Holly mentioned, going out the challenge of finding source whiskey. Finding this Georgia distillery, they had barrels that they were making a barrel a day. And so we started with that at 35%, rounded it out with some Kentucky bourbon. This is, let's see, how could I describe it? An untamed bird, if you know that distillery.
Unwild
bird, and then some Tennessee, and then some Canadian in there. So 9 to me has this really great cherry watermelon note on the top, and then a lot of earthiness and depth that comes from the Georgia.
Some Dickel.
On the 17-year, yep.
What were your tasting notes, Dan, on the 8?
8 to me, I get a ton of spice, right? I get classic rye from the rye notes. I get the same herbal tea. You get the caramel from the Kentucky, but then from that staves, you get this kind of just burst of baking spice on it.
So this one can use the staves.
No, the only discovery that's ever used staves
Number
and
8.
Is 8, and it was just a really fun, authentic way. They were from barrels, and we put holes in them, put wire through them, and put them in. It wasn't meant to be, I don't think it is perceived as a gimmick at all, but just a cool way to experiment and innovate.
So where do you do that? In your lab there, or?
Well, no, this was in the tank. It was assembled as a blend right before bottling. Yeah. But 9 is all just barrels put together. 9 to me leans a little more traditional.
So you dump everything together and then put staves and then bottle.
For 8, we did it that way. You can do it a myriad of different ways. People can do staves in the actual barrel. This was right before bottling.
Yeah, how long for the staves?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay, that's not a long time.
No, and it went very quickly. And like I say, it was when it was time, and you got to get them out. Otherwise, it'll get to the finish becomes too dry. Yeah.
With nine, I get a lot of chocolate, like I'm eating a Hershey bar. I love
that's coming from the Georgia. Actually, to me, is all these low chocolate notes, and there's a little herb. You what?
Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. They're a distillery that closed called Ivy Mountain.
Okay.
And
IVY.
IVY Mountain.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, really cool place, and close, and we found the barrels for sale. And when we do this, I taste the sample, and it's not necessarily saying, hey, we should bottle this by itself, but hey, this would add a lot of personality into a blend.
Yeah.
So we'll jump on it. So we're always on the hunt. Eventually we'll start using our own product in Discovery, but it's just not old enough yet. Discovery needs to have a more aged flavor profile.
Go ahead, Ann.
How old was this barrel, the barrels from Georgia? I mean, Because
They run anywhere right now. They're 8 to 10 years. So whenever you put an age statement on a label, you have to pick
Right.
the lowest age.
lowest.
So on the label, we called out 8-year, but it's actually 8, 9, and 10-year.
So this distillery is defunct. It's gone.
Defunct, yeah. But they were making some great product.
Yeah.
I never visited. I actually never got to talk to them. It was just the barrels for sale.
How old a distillery was it?
At least,
I'm not
at least 8 or 10 years old.
At least 8 years. Yeah, I would say 10 was the oldest stuff they had to offer. So they probably started around 2010, 2011.
So I remember back, I think it was 2020, during COVID, that you guys had, you were doing those wine collaborations with the California winery. I can't remember their name off the top of my head now.
It was probably Pfeiffer Pavitt.
Yes, Pfeiffer Pavitt. And in 2019, you had it as well. But it was interesting to see you had these collaboration projects going, but you also had a discovery going. I mean, what was the thought process behind having all of these different, I mean, we're talking high premium releases. These are not, the average whiskey buyers or affordability. You had these two things going on at the same time. And I'm just trying to understand, I loved it because I love the collaboration side of it as well. But how did that clash? Was that
No, we see them as independent releases. So we have a discovery, and you're right. At that time, we didn't have our own product to sell. So all we really had with our brand is blends and finishes. So we had more of them. Starting in 23, we'll move to a model that's 2 a year. So you have a spring discovery, a spring collaboration, fall discovery, fall collaboration.
Okay.
But yeah, they're kind of viewed as different releases, which actually is a perfect setup for the collaborative series, which is a really cool thing we do, which is working with another brand that produces a wine, beer, spirit. So in the past, we've done Prisoner Wine, Founders, KBS Stout, all kinds of cognac, rum. This year coming out, we have Four Square Rum, which is often described as the Pappy Van Winkle of rums. They've never collaborated or done a finishing project with a whiskey company, so excited to do that. And then the fall, we'll have Goose Island. Then we're doing one in barrel right now with Amrut Indian whiskey.
Oh, nice.
Got 150 barrels from them.
Wow.
And then just a lot of fun ones on the horizon. Like I say, we'll move to 2 a year. The one we have set up, and I think this is the next one, Charles. Are we on Plantation?
Yeah, we're going to do Plantation next, which is a very special one.
Yeah, so this came about, and all of these finishing projects, there's no ownership between the brands. We have no ownership in Plantation. No money changes hands, right? They're just authentic. This came, I was having lunch with the founder of Plantation. He also runs Ferran Cognac, and we had some like-minded opinions in the industry, and we met for a lunch, and he brought some rums and gins. They also do Citadel gin, and I brought some bourbon. And I told him about the collab, and it just went from there. We've got a big one with Amar Nonino, and that was literally just an Instagram message to Francesca Nonino saying, hey, do you want to do this? Four Square Rum, I had to bug Richard Seal for a couple years before he broke down. Actually went through his wife, Gail, to get that. And everything from for Cullen Irish whiskey, where we'll go out to Ireland. And then unofficially, so off the record, we just finalized, we've been hunting down the right Scottish whiskey partner. And I think we found one. They're going to send some barrels soon, which is Jura Irish whiskey, an island off Scotland. Sorry, I'm saying Irish Scottish. Yeah. Our Irish was for Cullen, but we were close with a few different Scottish whiskeys, but I think it's gonna work out with Jura. So they'll send barrels. Yeah, go ahead.
We're saving the Power Score bourbon for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That was a product of COVID, where I would send a blend. Their distiller at the time, Noel Sweeney, would send a blend back, and it was just really cool to make something.
We met Noel. We were there. I've been Power Score a couple times. We're big fans of what they're doing over there. So
That's all. They
excited.
just launched in the US, I think.
Yeah, the Furcolin, yeah.
The
Yeah,
Fur-
yeah.
But anyway, so the Plantation just came about through a lunch, right? And these aren't big money makers for us. It's just to explore flavor. So this is whiskey that we sourced, aged in plantation rum barrels. Usually we age anywhere from 7 months up to 36 months. It just depends really where the flavor is right. So this one, went a while. I think it went around 23 months, if I'm not mistaken, and really leans in to a Tennessee profile. And Tennessee will sometimes get a little maligned for its flavor. It'll get Flintstone vitamins. People will say citrus, orange. To me, there's a real nuttiness to it and a depth of flavor. We also balanced it with some Kentucky bourbon just to give it a bottom. We released this in the summer because I think it's just got this beautiful, almost calls back to the island. Like you can really just get this rum. It's the used Zayamaka, just Jamaican rum barrels from them. So you can see their 5-year Zayamaka release. It's those barrels. So it's finished in Jamaican rum barrels. And Jamaican rum has this thing called a hogo, a funk, right? When they ferment and cook, they can use all kinds of things, a lot of like rotting fruit to give it this high ester profile. And that funk, though much softened on this collaboration, really still comes through in a big way.
So this was Whiskey Advocate worthy, right? This was
yeah, I think this got
20?
Yeah, I think this got number 15 whiskeys of the year. So very cool to see. And the label is really nice too. It's almost like a treasure map feel we did with it. And Plantation's the parent owner of Ferrand Cognac. And there you go. We've got one held up right here. You can see exactly what's going on. Thanks, Luke.
Hey, Dan,
So
quick question about finishing. I've heard some blenders talk about how a certain time period, they would call it a double maturation. Like a few have said, if you're doing more than, 2 years, that's not a finish anymore. It's it's a double maturation. What's your opinion on kind of where finishing starts and ends and you're actually getting, a lot more influence than just a finish?
It's a great question. And to tie on to that, they recently changed the legislation, right with your thought, in that the years are cumulative now. We've never counted them that way, but if you have a 9-year bourbon and put it into a barrel for 2 years, you can release it now as an 11-year. So the TTB and the government are certainly thinking along the lines of a double maturation instead of just a finish. I feel like almost all of our collaborations, actually all of them, would be double maturations over, say, a light finish. We want to find balance, but when I think about other finishes out there or classic finishes that people know, whether it's, say, the Angel's Envy, or I think ours is more of a double maturation where we're going closer to 2 years and really trying to lean in and pick up those flavor profiles. I mean, if you nose this Plantation rum, there's no doubt that rum is there. It's not like a kiss of rum, right?
Well,
It's on there in a big
mouthfeel
way.
has changed. I mean, the
Yeah.
mouthfeel is totally different than, I mean, you can taste it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a viscosity there that you're exactly right. So I think of it, our stuff, especially the majority above 18 months is more of a double maturation. I think we just use finishing as a common term. Yeah.
It's a beautiful collaboration. I have to say, this is worthy of top 20. Some aren't worthy of top 20, but this is worthy of top 20.
That's great. And you held up the bottle. The cool thing we do with the collaborative series is we feature their iconography, their logo will be on the back of the glass, so that Plantation logo is right there on the back of the bottle. It's just a cool way.
Instagram it, there you go.
Yeah. So there's more of these to come. It's something, even when our core product's out, we'll still do discovery. We'll still do collabs. Foursquare will be out in April, which will be awesome. And then Goose Island, the Amrut whiskey, the Jura, Silver Oak Cabernet, those barrels are coming over next week, 150 used Silver Oak Cab barrels. So
of
that'll
the
be a cool one.
future collaborations, I know you're vested and you're behind product development now fully, but what are you most excited about? I mean, Foursquare obviously is pretty legit, hard to get, but I mean, what gets Dan Calloway excited from the Bardstown Bourbon Company future?
Well, we've got 3 barrels of Amaro Nonino aging right now, which I think are just incredible.
Okay.
Great stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's just really creative. It's really cool. We're doing a project I've been working on. I'm friends with Mark and Sherry Carter of Old Carter.
Yeah.
And they have a wine brand called Carter Cellars. And we did kind of this co-blend thing. And that to me is awesome. But I think what gets me up to work on this is above all else the team, right?
Yeah.
We're a small team making awesome decisions and making a mark on the industry. Think about we're playing in an orchestra, right? It's the same thing. You're nothing, and no one really wants to hear the French horn by itself too much, or the piccolo by itself. But you get in a group and you get to work with people, then that's a completely different beast.
So at
Dan,
what point are you going to play the French horn in the restaurant?
Keeps getting requested. I have the French horn in my house. I hadn't played it in years. I got it out. We did a Pixar event and used to do a lot of movie music, so I got it out for them, and that was it. I had to buy a case because I didn't have a case anymore, so I was the least prepared of anyone in the group.
So Dan, I heard you say about this whiskey that was a co-blend. What I heard was a Copeland.
A Copeland, yeah, that would be.
I'm a musician too, so that's what I heard.
fanfare for the uncommon.
Where is this Copeland theme?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good one. No, yeah, not Copeland.
That's a shalom.
Write that
joke
down.
right there.
Dan, I actually have two questions. The first throwaway is, did you love the French horn since you were 3, or is it something your parents thought would be able to get you a nice college scholarship?
No, the worst thing you could do would be to go to music for French horn, or to go to college for French horn. I would choose doctor if I had it again, but my dad was a band director and he needed a French horn, right? So that was the end of that.
There you go.
So
It comes
but
out
no.
on the 7th whiskey.
Okay, serious question though. For the plantation rum,
Yes.
what is the bourbon that goes in?
Yeah,
Did you
what's the
talk about that?
combination?
Was I busy typing or not?
Yeah, no, I'd happy to talk about it. It's actually a blend. And this was when I really started getting into product development and blends and started steering us to blending before we went into the barrel and running, even though they weren't bottled individually, I was running different experiments with this one. So one of them I did straight Tennessee. One of them I did some Tennessee and Kentucky, putting different ages, different things that necessarily weren't really called out, but all's fair to say it's a mixture about 50-50 of 9-year Tennessee and 12-year Kentucky at the end of the day.
Nice.
But this was kind of a guinea pig for me on how to age, and I got a lot of feedback that I could then apply to this Foursquare coming up. So this was cool, and I love where this landed. I also tweaked this as it went, right? There's nothing to stop you from, barrels evaporate after a year. So as long as you can maintain your final aging statement, goose it up, say it was too much Tennessee, put a little more Kentucky in the barrel, and take samples of all of them and chase this final profile I had in mind.
So Dan, okay, I'm sorry to
no, not at all.
It tastes like an Amaro to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
got
has that-
fruit from it,
It's like an Amaro. It's like I would have this, as an after dinner drink. It's like Amaro's amazing, and this is That's what
Yeah.
springs to mind. So, yeah,
That's awesome.
really good
Cheers.
tomorrow. Yeah, thanks.
Cheers. Yeah, it's a unique, it's I feel like it's the best of a lot of worlds.
So
you get that.
Holly had a good question. The Amrit and the Jura cast that you're collaborating with, have they by chance had peated malt at all, or are they?
The Jura is a split. So we tasted a lot of stuff, and their distiller came over and we went with a 50-50 peated and unpeated. So it's 75 peated, 75 unpeated.
Wow.
And we can play with it from there, right? We may say we wanted more peat, then we could, tote 20 of the peated ones, let the others keep going, and manipulate it that way. But on all the tabletop blends, that's what we're going to lean into.
Okay. Wow. That's great.
Yeah. And the Jura doesn't exist yet. So we're in the handshake phase yet.
Yes.
So working on what to put in there.
Okay. That's exciting.
Cool.
All right. So infrared, what the heck? What is this?
Oh, geez. Yeah. Is this the West Virginia?
Yeah.
Awesome. This was basically, we're the most technically advanced on distillation. Wanted to find a way to innovate and be creative on the finishing side, on the barrel side. So I went to a bunch of we work with about 10 different cooperages, basically saying, what are you excited about? The first two were like, we're busy. The third, we got to West Virginia Great Barrel Company, started about the same time we started. So they're new, they're modern. Looks like no other cooperage that I've ever been to. It's spotless. They use a lot of robotics, but they're on the forefront of technology in barrels. So we started hanging out. I was making this miserable drive to where the cooperage is, and would spend a lot of time. It's right by the Greenbrier. It's in the valleys of West Virginia. It's probably 10 minutes from the Greenbrier.
Okay.
White Sulphur Springs, I think it's called.
Okay.
West Virginia Great Barrel Company. And they would send us staves and wood pieces, and I would age them in bottles like this, right? So it looks like you're in like Dr. Frankenstein's lab or something. You got all these chips floating around and you're trying to find what works. And we landed on something special. So I'll tell you, that's enough of the process. What we landed on was 95% rye, 5% malted barley, finished, or it's actually strong enough to be a second maturation in zebra barrels of alternating oak. So it's American oak and cherry wood oak going around making a zebra barrel. Now, often when you use a second barrel of new oak, not all the other finishes we've talked about already had liquid in them. When it's the first use, it's usually too strong and there's too much wood and grip. So what we came up with, or what they came up with, was an infrared toast. So instead of flame, it's infrared light that takes it all the way down, and you get an even toast with minimal to no tannins. So you're getting the secondary flavor from the barrel without this rush of wood. And you'll still taste there's dryness on this, but it's softened by the infrared toast. What I love about this flavor is, talking about the blind tasting, you could line it up on any back bar of 30 whiskeys, and you can always pick this one out of the lineup. There's nothing else that smells like it. The cherry, the nutmeg, the almond, it's just really wholly unique pour. It's pretty cool to taste. So 95% rye, 5% malted barley, finished in infrared zebra cherry wood barrels from anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months.
I'm actually getting a lot of bacon. Like I've never had a rye whiskey that tasted like bacon before. So
yeah, it's fun. We've been leaning into that. I did a dinner in Michigan, and we did barbecue. The chef just wanted to do barbecue.
I'm getting like barbecue bacon notes galore.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Your spot, you have a chef's palate, because we're doing another dinner next week with a great chef, and he wanted to do barbecue and meat with it.
Yeah.
So you're spot on.
What is infrared?
Like light, it's
Okay, so
yeah.
you have the zebra barrel, and you're doing the
Light on the
rapid maturation with light and sound and pressure.
Well,
dancing
The- no-
girls and things like that.
No, so it's interesting. It's not maturation. It actually takes longer than a char. So when you char a barrel, usually takes about, say, 55 seconds of flame. They put the barrel and they flame is lighting it up for about 55 seconds. This takes about 15 minutes, and it's infrared light that drops into the middle of the barrel.
Into the dry
just
barrel.
heats it.
Instead of
Into the
instead of
dry
charring
barrel.
it, you're, oh, okay. I thought you were, thank you.
No, so, yep. So the liquid hasn't entered yet. This is how we toast the barrel with the infrared toast.
Okay. Mhm. Okay.
It's pretty amazing. Can you visit them? Are they like,
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, you can. I can connect anyone. If you message me on my Instagram, Danny Bardstown on Instagram, if you just send me a message, I can connect you with his name's Brett Wolfington there, and he could show you around.
Wow, that'd be cool.
It's an amazing tour to see. And like I say, the Greenbriers, 10 minutes down the road, you could get
Yeah.
around to golf or dinner there during the trip. How old is it? I believe it's 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. And then the tie-in is that we loved this flavor profile so much. We are applying this technology to our Origin series, our 6-year rye. So we tasted these two guys, right? Off our stills, the bourbon and the bottle and bond. There's a third Origin coming in April, which is our Origin rye. Our Origin rye will have this same finish on it.
Yeah.
But the current West Virginia, which is higher proof, 110 proof, bolder expression, that's available right now, and it's
We have it.
incredibly popular. I would scoop one up. There's not much left of it. So
Yeah, we have half of this tasting is available in the shop. Discovery 8 and 9, the West Virginia Barrel Company, and the Fusion are
That's
all
awesome.
available. So
and the Origin will be coming soon, so you can
yeah, super
get
excited.
that.
Yeah, this is really fun. I knew this was special, but I hadn't tasted it yet, and I was super excited to crack into this one. You know, I pour all these kits for everybody, and I smell, but I don't taste because I want to enjoy it like everybody else for the first time tonight. And yeah, click on the link, Lucas. There you go. But yeah, super awesome.
That's great.
What's the price on this one, Charles?
165.99.
Yeah, 165.99. All
Yeah,
of the
so these-
collaboration and discovery are, you know, they're premium, awesome blends and collaborations. So good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Did we hit 8? Is there another? I think we did.
Yeah, no, that's it, Dan.
That's
I don't
amazing.
I
That's
don't
a
want to take
marathon.
up too much of your time. I know what we're gonna do right now is first of all, before I stop the recording, I want us all to raise a glass, and if you have anything in your glass left, thank you to Dan Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Tonight's tasting was epic, like I expected it to be. We're gonna hang on here, however, so yeah, I don't know if you're going away or not, but I'm just gonna stop the recording just to keep it a little shorter. But thank you, Dan. Super.
Thank you, Dan.
Cheers.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And I have to say, visit to Bardstown Bourbon Company is absolutely necessary when in Kentucky, because it's such an amazing distillery, an amazing place to visit. Dan, I have a question for you. Now, one thing I
All right,
did
hold
get
on,
down.
John. Hold on.